Hello, how are you?
Morning.
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 You both look troubled.
Hmm, troubled.
What?
I don't what troubles. I'm stuck on the word.
Worries? Burdened?
Hmm,
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that's what you're feeling. I'm just saying your face is.
yeah. Hmm,
How are you, Steve?
Not good. And we're
what?
not changing the subject, but no, I'm struggling with stuff.
Hmm, yeah,
Life.
yeah.
So we're here to do something about learning, whatever that might be.
Yeah. Hmm,
Jesse, Clancy, and I got together on Friday for her sponsor group,
hmm.
and something that came out of it for me is I have a lot of ideas and facts about emergence, but I don't have a lot of personal information.
What kind of information?
Personal,
Okay. That's a big topic.
yeah,
Do you have an example of somebody who does have personal information about it?
Jesse.
And what was the example, or what is one of the examples?
Um, I mean, the easiest one for me to recognize is his relationships with his parents and his mother-in-law. Um,
In what way? Because you said about emergence.
yeah, seeing the relationship more clearly for himself and like protecting himself or understanding more about himself in relationships to people in his life who, I mean, being ones or not, it's just like how to take theory and apply it to your life. And it's like seems pretty natural. Like I know that the process to get there wasn't not easy, but now
How
it's
do you
in
know
you,
that?
Jesse.
How do you know that? And
He's
I'm not trying
he's
to find fault, but I'm trying to get you to think. How do you know the process wasn't easy?
because he's said it before.
Okay,
I've seen him hurting. I've seen his face talking about it.
okay. That's this month's really, last month's big thing where you're seeing his face, right? Okay, all of that. The thing is that knowing emergence, let me go slow. As a matter of fact, how about you both get something to write with since your body first? I know that that helps.
Yeah.
And we can wait till you're finished eating if you want, Lexie.
No, I can do both. Thank you.
Okay, number one. The emergence is a number of things. And so emergence as a personality theory is related to, but not the same as emergence as a therapy.
Mm.
There's emergence as a theory of the mind, which is the first book. Emergence as a personality theory is the second book. Emergence as a scientific method is the third book. Emergence as a therapy is the fourth book. So why don't you write those four things? That's a lot to write, but there are many meanings to the word emergence, and there are meanings that I don't use. So emergence as a theory of mind is book one.
Mm.
Emergence as a personality theory is book two. Emergence as a scientific method is book three. Emergence as a therapy is book four. So book five pulls from all four of those things to talk about diagnosis. So that is the first and most practical book. So emergence as the basis for diagnosis is book five. So if you look at the way this is written, the first four things, there are four parts: the mind, personality, um, scientific method, and a therapy.
I don't know why I can't hear you guys anymore.
You can't
I'm
see?
gonna come back in.
You can't? Okay.
Mm.
You could see it, Jesse?
Yeah. Ah, I like organizing it this way, or just thinking about it this way. Mm.
Can you see?
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
So um, the top four things, the first four books are um, the four things which everything is based on. And partly this is to say that the emergence as the basis for diagnosis means that the diagnosis book pulls from all four of those books to explain diagnosis. It pulls from the therapy book, it pulls from the personality book, it pulls from the theory of mind book, and it pulls from the scientific method book. So the fifth book has all four of those basic books, um, as what where the books come from. So now, why am I saying this? Well, because when you are looking at yourself, Lexie, and trying to understand how do you find personal meaning from all of those four books. The first thing I want you to see is um, there's 500,000 words in those first four books. Think what I'm saying, 500,000. When you're trying to see this in a personal way, I want you to remember, not because it's discouraging, but because this is so complex, because they're natural patterns. It's like looking at a leaf and trying to see every detail in a leaf. A single leaf is so complicated. But if you look at an oak leaf, if you look at another leaf, you can say this is an oak leaf or it's not, because you can see the pattern, even though it's complicated. So, okay, so that's the first thing, just to realize how complicated the thing is, so that any question that you ask about emergence is welcome. But the answer to it, at best, a person can give you a beginning. And a beginning could be an example. So you have been pre-learning about, say, character type for several years now. But if you focus on the words, it has no meaning. It doesn't mean character in the dictionary usually means a whole person's personality, which is not what it means in emergence. And that's frequently the case because I have to pick words that are useful. And there is no word for character type in the meaning that we use it. None. So that's what I picked. I don't know why. I just did. So now let's talk about it'll happen in all five books, but the first four books have a way that they're constructed. The ideas are constructed. And why am I telling you this? Because it's helpful for you trying to see it personally. So the first thing that's there is the only things that I write about are pairs of perfect opposites. So you can write down as a thing, number two, because that stuff is number one. Number two, emergence okay, yeah. I would say all forms of emergence only describe perfect opposites. So that's a very complicated sentence, even though it's few words. Okay. They don't describe anything as single ideas. If I refer to character type, that sounds like a single idea, but character type comes from a pair of opposites. And a perfect pair means that not only are they opposites, but that they describe every possibility when you consider both pieces. So, example, me first versus you first. Okay. Again, this is so complicated. It sounds simple. It's not. I can see your sweater, Lexie, and I can see my shirt, but I cannot see both at the same time clearly. I can see your needs, or I can see my needs, and the word needs is complicated in itself, but I can't see both at the same time. It's not possible. I can be inside my house, I can be outside my house, but I cannot be both. It's not possible. So somebody might say, but can't you be standing in the doorway with 1 foot out and 1 foot in? Okay, and that's important. How would I say this? Okay. All forms of emergence measure things like coin tosses. So all forms of emergence measure things as if they're coin tosses. So measure means to determine. So in this case, you are measuring whether a person is me first or you first. That's what it's measuring. Already, this is complicated. And yet, that's the basis for knowing person's character type, being able to measure which one of those states the person is in. There are qualifications. You can't measure it when the person is reliving an injury.
Mm.
Are you be able to see it?
Yeah, it
Okay.
came back.
You can't measure it when the person is reliving an injury or is in a like an altered state, like on drugs, or has just been in a car accident. The measurement can only happen when the person's in a normal state because you are measuring their normal personality. There's not a other personality. There are just deviations from the normal, but they're like coin tosses. So can you tell the outcome of a coin toss? Okay, years ago, I was trying to demonstrate this in the group room in my office, which has carpet on the floor. And I threw a quarter in the air, and the quarter landed in the nap of the carpet and was standing up. It taught me that I needed to add, for the test to be invalid, the coin must land.
Mm.
So all forms of emergence measure things as if they are coin tosses, and for the test to be valid, the coin must land. So consider how the test is whether I'm in my house or I'm outside my house. Well, I haven't landed. If if a foot in the house and I have a foot out of the house, that's like the coin landing in the nap of the carpet. It hasn't landed.
Mhm.
So in order for a test to be valid about me first or you first, the test has to land.
Mm.
Somebody can say to you, well, sometimes I'm this and sometimes I'm this, which is most likely true. But that's not a single test. That's just simply saying, well, sometimes I'm one way and sometimes I'm another. Well, I could say my foot is half in the, 1 foot's in the house and 1 foot's outside. It's not a valid test. There's nothing to say about that other than it's not a test. And if somebody says, sometimes my foot is outside the house and sometimes it's in, it's not a valid test. Does that make sense? This is a lot already.
Yeah, it makes sense. I have a question
Good.
just using information from this morning. when I asked you how you are and you said not good, it was really hard to switch because I was
And
focused on you,
and and that's normal and caring. But
right?
I asked you to do that um, because what makes me better in part is what we're doing.
Mm.
Take
Yeah.
that in, Lexie. You asking me
Okay.
a question which has so much meaning to me, my life's work.
Mhm.
I am better. I'm not
Mhm.
well. And whatever that is, it's personal things and they will resolve. I mean, that's just my life. But
Mhm.
um, when we're talking about this, okay, let me write this down. Am I inside the house or outside
Mhm.
is the question. And the invalid answer is 1 foot in and 1 foot out.
They think that it feels to me 1 foot in, 1 foot out in my body. Like my
Feels,
urges,
feels what?
it feels like that in my body. 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Good.
I have urges for you. I have urges for Jesse.
That's where I was going. Now I
Okay.
want you to see. Okay, so write down what I've added. Question, right? An answer. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so now I'm turning my page because number three will be,
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
If I could define my life by one word,
what's that?
if I could define my life by one word, it would be ambivalence.
So now I've numbered that three. It's a separate part, right? But I want you to see what we did because we did a lot.
Hmm.
So first I broke down the four basic, the foundation parts of emergence by books. And then I added the fifth book, which uses all four parts, right? Then I said all of the things in all five books, all of them, every single thing only describes perfect opposites. That's it. There are no single points. So the title, character type, is not the idea. Me first and you first are the pair of perfect opposites. First, because there can't be any other options. And second, because together they describe everything that's possible. Okay. So then all forms of emergence describe things, all forms, everything in these books describes these opposites as if they measure these things as if they're coin tosses. So one thing is saying they exist as perfect opposites, and this is saying, well, how do we know they exist? How do you measure that? How do you prove that? Where's your evidence? So we measure it with tests that are like coin tosses. And this is important because, as I said, the coin could land in a nap of a carpet, but it doesn't really become heads or tails. It doesn't actually land. So the test is invalid. Then we went to somebody saying, but sometimes that can be me first and sometimes you first, which is common. Three of the four character types, well, two of the character types can have that. So two of the four. So then what does that mean? When the person says that, it's not a test. Why is it not a test? Because the coin hasn't been thrown in the air and it hasn't landed. So while the person saying that is true, and this is a frequent thing that people raise, all that it is doing is seeing which landed. Do you determine a person's character type with one coin toss? No, no. But if you have 100 coin tosses and it lands 60 times heads, then that's first. Anyway, so, but to go more thing, am I inside the house or outside the house? Right? And then answer 1 foot in and 1 foot out. So now that's beginning to make it a personal experience, Lexie.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's not theory. This is an example. And you can picture it. And so then
Mm.
I say that experience, ambivalence is the experience of 1 foot in and 1 foot outside the house. At which point you say, that's my life.
Mm.
Okay. So it's a little less than half an hour. And what I was trying to do is give you an example of how to make it personal. Now, both of you have a ton of pre-learning. So any one of those things, somebody could have argued.
Mm.
But the idea that emergence in this way is trying to answer your question by doing it instead of answering your question just with ideas.
Mm.
Also, the example that I use, Lexi, is the ideal kind of example because you were feeling a lot of emotion about the ambivalence. It wasn't just deciding, well, what color do I want to paint my living room? Without all the parts are necessary. Not you do not need to know everything that's in all of those books. That's ridiculous. But you need to know that the amount of information there in those books, there is or is not, another tipping point, a measurement that would answer your question. There are so many things in emergence that it is never intended to answer anybody's question. You know, will I fall in love? I can't answer that question. Is there a God? I can't answer that question. And they're not meant to answer those things. They're meant to make a difference in your own life. Now, I suspect the two of you will never forget never lose in a normal state of mind the experience of ambivalence being 1 foot in and 1 foot out of your own house.
Mm.
Ideally, that's the way people would be taught. They're not. People are told, some definition, and the definition is a list of qualities. This is not a list of qualities. This is a personal experience. It's a simple one. It's a common one. Everybody walking out of their house at some point is in or out. If you're OCD, the ambivalence at the door thing is common because you're worried that the stove isn't on. So immediately, here's a different example that a therapist would use. And where does the ambivalence peak? 1 foot in and 1 foot out for the person who has OCD. That's where it peaks. When they get outside the house, often they feel certain they didn't turn the thing off and they go back in.
Mhm.
So the ambivalence, not the pain, not the worry, but the ambivalence peaks as they're halfway in and halfway out. If I'm right, both of you should be overwhelmed right now. And you basically just saw the most core principle of everything in emergence. Every single thing in all of those books fits that pattern and nothing else. If there is no pair of perfect opposites for the situation, then my answer is I cannot know. And you might want to write that down. If there is no known pair of perfect opposites, then the question can't be known. The answer can't be known.
Hmm.
So think about that.
Yeah. Hmm.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Uh,
It
okay. Is this water cold?
looks like it would be cold,
It looks like
but
it's
I can't know.
there's no, but I'm saying something that has never occurred to almost all people, which is that you can't know. You can say what you did say is is information. It looks like it, and that matters, but you can't tell. Okay, I don't think I have a bottle that's opposite this, and they wouldn't be perfect opposites if I did, but if I had a bottle that was sitting outside, same bottle, I, but I had one that's sitting outside and there were beads of something rolling down the outside that had been in the heat, and then I compared these two, it would be easier to say this one is colder than this one, or this one is hotter than this one. Look what happens when I add even an imperfect pair of opposites, as compared to just there is no other thing, and it's just this bottle, and is it cold?
Hmm.
So even adding that other bottle with sweat on it, huge difference. Almost everything people ask or think of is just one bottle.
Hmm.
Okay, so Jesse, you'll
Yeah.
your, how long did it take you to believe that your father was a one?
Oh man. Um, almost 3 years with you, I think, or 2.5, something like that.
And we spoke about it a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And I didn't bring it up. You brought it up because your father had done some new selfish thing. And I would say, okay, character type. And can you remember any of your resistance? Not feel a feeling, but any ideas that you said it would interfere with your accepting it? Can you
Yeah.
remember any ideas?
Yeah. Um, he would get annoyed if Mary, my stepmom, would try to help him with something, like when he was sick, or I don't know. He would just swat her away. And I would frame that as he's a two. He doesn't want someone to see his needs or something. I did that a couple of times. Once when he was in the hospital, he didn't want help. That was one idea I had.
Good. So
Yeah.
let's see. What's the opposite interpretation of what Jesse just said? Jesse interpreted it as he doesn't want help.
Yeah.
He's using to what else could it be?
I don't know.
Well, how about the idea that the kind of help he was being offered was not what the king wanted?
Mm.
Now look at what just happened to Jesse. The same words can go either way as far as character type,
Hmm.
or they can't, and there's no way to know.
Hmm.
Can you see, Jesse, that the meaning to the person
Hmm.
can go either way?
Hmm. Yeah. Hmm.
So I wrote down the difficulty accepting this, which is number 4. Difficulty accepting number 4 comes from let me change it, having to accept that people can't change.
Hmm. Oof.
So that's been one of the main obstacles to people believing this, including for you in that time, Jesse. The idea of saying that a person is, their personality is, like there's a fixed part of personality, right? Um, Difficulty comes from accepting that the person can't change. And that again is a pair of opposites. Okay. And I know I'm breaking your brains. I'm trying to go slow.
Can you say that again, Steve, that last part?
Okay. People have a hard time believing they can't change their character type.
Hmm.
People have said that.
Hmm.
Okay. And that is the biggest barrier to people accepting that if there is no known pair of perfect opposites, then the answer can't be known. That's a huge, huge, huge idea. People think if they look hard enough, they can know the answer to anything. But I'm saying no, there are many, more than not, most things cannot be known because there isn't a pair of opposites that can land. Okay. But a difficulty accepting that that's true often comes from having to accept that people can't change. It's very difficult for people to accept that, especially when you love somebody. But we're talking about personality, mind, whatever, measurable things that are fixed by 4 years old. The things are fixed. So why do people have difficulty accepting that? Because they're almost everybody who does personality measures behavior, right? And not personality, which in essence is measurable urge patterns of urges. Traditionally, every single personality theory is measurable patterns or generally is patterns of behavior. But personality is measurable patterns of urges. Okay. So, Lexi, can you see that personality or urges and behavior are a pair of perfect opposites?
No, not until just now.
Good. So, an urge is an urge, it's not acted on yet. When you act on it, it moves to behavior.
Mm.
If you have an urge and you haven't taken any action, then it's an urge. And if you have taken an action, no matter how small, it is now behavior. You've behaved. So, in order for you to know the difference between an urge and behavior, it has to land. If you are in the middle of like doing something, paused, like, do I want or don't I want this to eat this cake? If you're paused, it's not a measurement. You're 1 foot in and 1 foot out. It hasn't landed. But the minute that you decide not to or to, that decision is in deciding how you will behave. That means that the urge, it's moved from an urge to behave.
Okay. What if there's a new urge as you're eating the cake?
Okay, that's good. But a new urge is a separate measurement. That would be like saying, okay, I measured Jesse as you first. Now, when I go to you, that means that I didn't measure Jesse. I know that's complicated. What you're saying is the first urge gets measured and it changes to behavior. The next urge is a separate measurement. In other words, we live on the timeline. So the urge that you had 10 minutes ago is not the same urge as the one now. It may resemble it in the kind of urge it is, but it's literally a different urge.
Okay.
It's
And
a new coin
yeah,
toss.
what's
Is that
that?
what, is it a new coin toss?
That's correct, Jesse. That's exactly what
Mm.
I'm saying.
Okay.
It's a
Okay.
new test because it's a new urge.
Yeah.
Even if the urge is described as the same kind of urge, okay, let's say you had an urge to eat something, last Thursday, Is that the same as an urge that you have this morning to eat breakfast? No. Say it was breakfast last Thursday and you had an urge to eat breakfast. Is the urge today a different urge? Yes.
Mm,
And that urge will be resolved by either doing it or not doing it, and that's the behavior.
mm,
Your
Okay.
your question was a good one, Lexie. Can you tell? No,
No.
it didn't land.
Mm,
Therefore, you couldn't accept the compliment.
mm,
mm. I I just feel like my mind made something so complicated. You're trying to make it more simple, even though it is complicated. And so,
Okay, it's both.
okay.
The pattern that we can
Mm,
measure is simple. The behavior that results from the measurable pattern, we're measuring personality, we're measuring urges. We're not
mm,
measuring behavior.
mm.
We're
mm.
not measuring it.
Okay, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So, um, let's say I relive a startle, and each time that happens, I have an urge to eat ice cream. I eat ice cream every time I relive a startle.
Okay.
Okay,
Mhm.
is that I don't even know if that's possible. To the behavior being attached to the startle, but I'm thinking about is that it's like the candle flame. It's different each time, but it's similar pattern.
Okay. That's a very complicated question. Um,
Okay. This is why my brain made it really
no, no, no.
complicated.
You are asking a question that is so um, complex because you're in essence switching from our fundamental topic, which is okay. It came up. Do not feel bad. You're switching from the fundamental topic, which is here are the things that apply to everything in emergence. And here is how we measure it. And here is how we know we can't know.
Mm.
And this can't know um, is better than ambivalence because ambivalence is can I know or can I know? So the idea of ambivalence is the coin doesn't land. That's what I said. Okay, then if there is no known pair of perfect opposites, we can't measure something. So is there in any injury at all, if there is a tendency for you to eat ice cream, is there a perfect opposite to that as an outcome also? Think of the water bottle. It's not perfect.
Uh-huh.
That means, and I know this is hard, but it's simple logic. It never will be only ice cream. Never. Now, that here it is. Difficulty accepting this often comes from having to accept that the outcome can't change. So, another variation of number five. It's difficult for you to accept that, and I know it.
Oh, okay.
So look at how that's the opposite of people thinking that it's impossible for a person not to be able to change. I'm saying too many things. There are too many ideas.
I think, well, I'm still if I go back to what you said about behavior and versus urges, which I know you have said to me so many times. I know we had my first retreat, we talked about this, and I still don't understand it. I still don't understand how I can measure someone else's urges. And I know the information I have is that I have to experience it in my body.
Yes, that's correct. That's the primary information that it tells you these answers these questions. Yes.
And I can't understand it. Like I can't, I don't like this is what I think this is an example of when I understand it as a theory, as an idea, but not for myself.
Okay. Okay. So you can understand the way that something is described theoretically. You can understand what's being said,
Yeah.
but moving it to something personal is the difficulty.
Yes.
That's where we started.
Yes.
That's what you said you came away with from the sponsor group.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And let me do my best to try and answer that.
Mm.
I got to fix something. I'll be right. 1 minute.
How are you doing?
I'm good. All right.
So, how about a digression for a couple minutes?
Okay.
I want you to think about who you were 2 years ago, Lexie, compared to what you are this morning. Not
Mhm.
about your life, about you sitting with me and talking. Now, tell me what you can immediately access. What's the difference in you as a person?
I can't, I don't think there is. I know that that's probably impossible, but I can't see anything. I feel like I'm still the same person.
You're still what?
The same person. Like I have the same problems in understanding.
Okay, that's because you're seeing, not understanding, which is in some sense a behavior in the way you're describing it. It's not an urge. An urge would be wanting to understand or wanting to avoid learning. But you're claiming, okay. So I would say to you that the Lexi I knew 2 years ago wouldn't be asking any of these questions at all. Not a one. This entire hour of us talking is probably the most clear path that I have ever spoken about this with any human beings. And
Mhm.
Jesse, you know me quite a while, almost 10 years. Would you agree that what I'm saying this morning is a simpler path?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now, Jesse saying it's a simpler path does not describe how you were 2 years ago and how you are now. But
Mhm.
Lexi, one of the main things I've worked on with you is your barriers to believing or wanting to learn. You somehow don't take what's happening here as you learning. And I think that you define learning as having the answer.
Yeah. Having the coin land.
Exactly. And learning, gerund, ing, means the coin is still in the air.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? It may not fully answer the question that I'm asking
Yeah.
you, but
It makes sense. I think it comes back to your number uh, 5, difficulty accepting the outcome. Like I'm resistant to take this in as learning.
say it again.
I'm resistant to taking in the coin being in the air as learning because I just want to be out of it. I just want to have something that I can say, yes, I've learned this. want to have certainty about something.
Because you feel like then it becomes a done deal? Like why?
Then I'm not sure exactly. I think then I have a piece of information to say, look, you learned something about this, about emergence. You've learned something that you can now contribute to the world, to your clients, to
Mhm.
yourself.
Lexie, would you have said that 6 months ago?
I don't know.
No, I have never heard you say anything like that. I'm welling up with tears. I can't want for more than for you to want to be able to take this and help people in the world. That is my reason for living. You wouldn't have said that 6 months ago. You wouldn't have believed you could learn it. Right now, you're saying you haven't learned it, but you're saying you want to. You couldn't have said, I want to learn this 2 years ago. You simply wanted me to tell you answers about therapy, which I understand. Look, everything I've said in the past hour challenges what the whole world believes about measuring things, personality, the mind, all of it. It challenges so much. I see that, and that's painful.
Mm.
Okay. I think it in some way you do not see the steps of learning emergence as actual learning. You don't see it as that.
Mm.
You're taking something as if it's like a whole completeness. So this will confuse you, but have you not recognized that every month I know more? Okay. Now let's think of the implications of what I knew a month ago. A month ago, I didn't know that people's memories and understandings of everything are clearly divided first and mostly between people who only communicate and back and receive and communicate with physical things, faces, etc., and people who talk in words. Well, I've known mind body orientation for over 20 years, but I didn't realize the implication that it does with memory. Body first people can remember something in their bodies, but then they will infer what words were said to match your body. Mind first people will get stuck on the words, but often, and in my case, this is profoundly painful, to see the face of the other person. If I have it on a video, look at the face of the other person and realize all I took away was the words, and I gave the words a meaning without seeing the face. So now I'm saying this because this is what I learned over the past 5 weeks. I have known mind body orientation for 20 plus years. I have only learned this about memory as the root of fights. People are fighting about what they remember, and they both remember a part, but they don't remember often both kinds of information. That includes me. I have to go back and look at videos to see that.
Mm.
Okay, now why am I telling you this? Because I'm telling you that after all these years, Lexi, I just learned what may be one of the most important things that I have ever learned about the implications of emergence, what it does to relationships. I learned that 5 weeks ago. Even though I knew the other information clearly for all these years, what you're looking to have doesn't exist. In other words, you're defining learning as some kind of a done, even if it's done only in one place. but
Mm.
nothing in emergence is like that. So your trouble is because school has taught you there's a done. Here's the test. You passed the test. Now you know it. Yeah, but then test the idea of that and tell me, could you pass a test for your licensing exam today?
Probably not.
And neither could I. Do you hear that? Neither could I. So the idea of a done, learning meaning done. No, learning is a experience of life where what you're interested in is knowing more, seeing more, growing. Can you see how challenging that is? I'm directly challenging, I wish I wasn't, your definition of the word learning. And it's not a word game. What you're doing is you're suffering endlessly because you believe learning is a done. And that is not your fault. School said that's what it was. Anything that is done is dead. Anything that is done, like person-centered language, it's an abomination. I can do it. I can imitate it, but it never had a good meaning to me. It's hurtful. Word police. So I can say something about that, but the truth is that if I was to consider what I don't like about it, I think every month I could think of a new thing. That means I'll never be done knowing the abomination called person-centered language. Okay, in this time we have left, let's talk about, and I don't want to force it on you, what have you learned this morning about emergence? And this is going to be a challenge for you because you're going to say, but I don't know it completely or I don't know enough of it. I already see it on your face. Your reluctance to admit that you've learned something is because your definition is the way the schools have put it in your head as a done. But meanwhile, I'm the person whose work you're studying, and I'm never done. If I live 10 more years, I'm going to make discoveries for 10 more years unless something happens to my brain. Hopefully not. But that's because it doesn't stop. And after I'm dead, Sam and Maria and everybody else in the community hopefully will know enough to keep making discoveries. That's why I'm trying to teach the basics instead of focusing on the practical uses. Because I want to pass to all of you the ability to discover. No coincidence, the third book is called The Science of Discovery. So back to you. So how would you describe what you've seen today? Not what are the parts, but are you describing it as it's not learning? What would you say it is? We talked about the coin landing or not. 1 foot in and 1 foot out. You're nodding your head. Does it have a meaning for you? That's what you learn.
Yeah.
Tell me in any way you can, what does it mean to have 1 foot in and 1 foot out?
I think like um, the words that came to me, it's not a bad thing that to have 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Wow, Lexie. Now, do you realize that's personal learning? because I didn't say that to you. You found
Yeah.
that on your own. You discovered it.
Mm.
What, anything else? Anything at all that you've begun learning, meaning that you have learned parts of today.
Mm. Okay. I'm just gonna let you see the the parts that came to me first. It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
something that is positive.
Say it again.
Um, okay, I'll just tell you the example I had in my mind that came when you asked the question.
Yes.
That it took Jesse 3 years to accept that his dad might be a one, and that I've been in emergence 3 years, and what have I accepted? Was the question.
Okay. Do you have an answer for that?
Not one that is full, not one that is a coin on the ground.
Whatever your barrier to, um, I don't think you have a barrier to learning. I think you have a barrier to accepting that you have learned something. I think that learning has a meaning for you that's different from me. I see you, Jesse, but in other words, no. Okay. You know quite a few ideas, character type, and the thing that I would say that you have just begun to learn recently in the past 6 months, but increasingly since you've been with Clancy, is you would like to learn it. You've shown that this morning. I don't think you get that that is learning.
Yeah, I don't get that as learning.
Holy shit. How many people do you think would have such a sincere desire to learn these things from me? And the answer is almost no one. It hurts to learn them. It's like waking up in the first Matrix movie and realizing the world is pretty painful. It's not what you thought. But you have learned, you've been exposed to enough that you, on your own, asked me this morning about how do you, can you, or it, I would like to have a personal experience of something in emergence. You asked that question. Why is it that you don't give yourself credit for asking the question? You look like you don't have an answer.
Okay.
That's okay.
I've learned this morning um, how much you care for me.
That's learning.
I've learned this morning that a few times I impacted Jesse just by looking at his face.
That's excellent. hmm That's that. You learned that this month, Lexie. You learned to look and use the information in your body to know things. You learned that this month. Yeah. Jesse, you had something to say?
Yeah. Um, just I just wanted to comment on like me accepting my dad as a one and how that continues to evolve. I mean that, you know, then I had Otis and I had a literal baby. You know how much I learned every day about having a father with the same spirit,
Exactly.
you know? And
That's
it
where the
just,
word comes from.
yeah. And it just I just kept learning. And then I call him and say, I cried and say how hard it is to have a baby. And then I hear his answer, and then I learn it again. And why did I think he'd be comforting? You know, those kind of things. And I just keep learning. Um, and same with even what Steve's brought up the last 5 weeks about, it's like I'm relearning on body first, like every day. I mean, yeah. So it just keeps like a story. I don't know. It just keeps.
And the point, Lexi, is that you have seen some artificial done as what you should do. And I am saying to you, anything that's done isn't learned.
Mhm.
It's not learned. It's not the only things we can know are the things that are the coin tosses. Like, are you smart? Okay. So I wrote down, add this at the bottom. Learning is not already knowing the answer. Learning is the coin in the air.
The coin is in the air.
So to learn what it means to go out of the house, you have to have one foot in and one foot out. Think of what I'm saying. If you're already out of the house, you may say you know what it's like to be out of the house, but the only way you learn what it's like to be out of the house is to be in the house and leave. That's the real way to learn. It's the pair of perfect opposites in the house, out of the house.
Mm,
People say they want to leave relationships. I want out of this relationship. This just happens every time people are get divorced. But the truth is they want out of the relationship because they imagine they know what how it is. No, they don't. No, they don't. That first day that you move out, if a person is really aware, that's the first time because you're still in the relationship, even though you live someplace else, but you're out of the relationship. And simple things like not seeing the person's toothbrush next to yours, some ordinary things. Now one foot in and one foot out, and that's when you know whether you want to be out or not.
mm. That reminds me, Steve, just talking about my dad. When I took space from him and didn't talk to him for that year, that's what I've really felt it. That
That's
was like me leaving the house.
that's right. And at first, you were angry and you were still half in because anger is half in and
Yep.
half out.
Yep.
After a while, you began to realize what it's like to be away from him.
Yeah.
And only then could you look back because of the experience of half in and half out. Only then did the coin land.
That, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And,
Wow.
and so then I'll take the idea of having a baby.
Yeah.
This is like when you think about having a baby, you can have all manner of single point ideas, but you can't actually know that you do or don't want a baby till you have one. Now think about what I'm saying. Till the baby exists, till
Yeah.
the coin lands. Other than that, it's just a theoretical discussion that no human being can know. Now, after you've had one child, then you have the coin has landed, and so you can have information that you never had before.
Yeah.
But learning what it means to have a baby doesn't happen the first months the baby is alive because you still live in the world where you could do whatever the fuck you wanted and didn't have to stay home. But then you can't. So you live 1 foot in and 1 foot out of the no kid, have a kid for a while
Oh,
before the kid lands.
yeah.
Some parents, the kid never lands. They're constantly ambivalent about, I should have never had a kid, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't land. Meanwhile, the kid exists.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So what I see from the outside, Lexi, is that what I just said, you understand. Would you agree?
Yeah.
The words I just said, I don't think you would have understood an hour ago or 2 hours ago before you got on.
Mhm.
Not like you do now. So slowly, the understanding that you have gained is measurable by how much and the ease with which you understood what I just said now. I just moved it to having a baby, and you understood what I was saying.
It made me think about just in the context of learning that I have all of your books and I make decisions about myself before even reading them.
Yes, that's
So
correct.
I don't let it land because I don't open the book.
That's right.
Mhm.
Not to say I never open the book, but I just make I'm thinking too about the coin toss
Yeah.
that if I've tried to read the diagnostic book, let's say 10 times, I only have 10 experiences, but that's not enough. It sounds like that's not enough.
Well, it hasn't landed. And landed means, okay, what does landed mean in that case? It would mean that there's something in the diagnosis book, an idea that's stuck. Stuck doesn't mean done. Stuck means, oh, it has a value. Oh, it doesn't mean that you could teach it. It means, oh, I can
Yeah.
see, I can see the point.
So okay, that just gave me another thought that with um with Eric leading the book club,
Yes.
that I have gained something each time I've read the two chapters,
Ah,
but it's not something I could say. It's not something I
okay.
could teach. It's not, I don't know it all yet. And that's
Yeah. And
what
can you
keeps me
hear that
from,
that is, I don't, okay.
Mhm.
I have had a number of experiences um, where somebody quotes something from one of my books
Mhm.
and asks me a question or says they don't believe it. Okay. I have had a lot of times, Lexi, where I can't remember that I said it. Me, I can't remember that I wrote it. I wrote it. I can't remember. That's me. What does it mean about what I've learned? That I often, when I'm in the course of a journey through pages, when I'm writing, things come to me along the way, like, oh, look, there's an A&P. Oh, look, there's a gas station. And in my writing, I go, oh, look, that's object visual. Oh, look, that's whatever. But then I often have no memory of having written that. Does that sound like your measurement for not learning?
Mhm.
That's me, the person who is coming up with these things. I have often read things like when I went to Asheville a few months ago and I read on the plane, I was reading from the diagnostic book. I didn't remember writing half the shit that I read. I have this, what looks like a boastful reaction because I don't remember. And I go, whoa, that's pretty smart. But it isn't me saying I'm smart. It's going, I don't fucking remember ever writing that, but I did write it. You know, wow. Because nobody can uh, know all the parts. And you know the idea when for instance when Lexie asked the question, Jesse, and you thought about your dad,
Yeah.
you know, what I she wanted a personal experience of something in emergence, and you brought that up. Now, if Lexie hadn't asked that question, what are the chances you would have just suddenly started talking about your dad being a one?
There. I don't know. Yeah. Low.
No, but that's correct. I mean, not a billion to the billionth nth zero. It's possible, but
Yeah.
not likely.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm trying to say is because Lexi asked a question and that jogged your memory of your dad, well,
Hmm.
that's how I write books.
Yeah.
I'll write a sentence and it will jog my memory about something else that's related. But that doesn't mean that I remember all the parts because memory comes from something jogging the parts.
Mhm.
I don't remember.
Yeah, and it gave me a new meaning of looking at
That's
the,
right.
it gave me a
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
that I didn't have. Yeah.
But this probably the first half of what we did today is extremely important. The second half is extremely personally important for you, Lexi. The part about what is learning. What does it mean to have learned something? And the idea that even things I wrote them in the context of other things, and I was jogging thoughts in my head as I wrote sentences. And then when I edit, I go back and I look at what I wrote, and often rereading it jogs something else, and I add something else in. I don't remember the order. When I go back and read most of what I've written, it's understandable to me. So what have I learned? Well, I have learned to recognize the pattern, but the test isn't answer the question on the test about it. It is in the context of a real life situation. Do I know what character type is? That doesn't mean that I remember all the things I wrote about it in my books. I don't remember. I don't care. You care desperately. Your measure of learning is knowing all those things and be able to say them back. That's not my test for learning. My test is in a conversation where somebody asks me about emergence, right, like you did this morning, can I say things that are accurate? And the couple pages that I wrote down, these 2 pages, so there are 2 pages. Okay. Where did this come from, Lexie? It began with you. You see all the stuff here? I have never written this down in this order for anybody. I have never spoken about it in this way to anyone. You began the story, and then it jogged things in me and you along the way. My proof for having learned this, what's on these pages, is that I was able to do this with you. But if I sat down to write this by myself without having written it down now, I wouldn't remember all that.
Mhm.
So what have I learned? Well, the underlying essence, the things like that, I have learned to feel my way through a question. But I don't have the inhibition most times to say it back in any exact way because I can't.
Mhm.
I just saw a pattern. Um, this weekend I took a group of Girl Scouts out for a backpacking trip.
Say it again.
And yeah, this weekend I
Yeah.
took out a group of 12-year-old Girl Scouts on a backpacking trip.
Okay. That's interesting.
I get paid to do it. um, but as we entered the forest, there's a stretch of trail where there's a lot of poison ivy. So I stopped, I showed them the poison ivy. I talked about the pieces of it so you can identify it. And then I noticed as I was listening to them behind me, they are touching anything green.
Oh God.
And what they're doing is they're saying, "Oh no, I touched poison ivy." And I'm looking and there's no poison ivy. I realized I didn't learn it. So what I did is I stopped again and I said, "Let's look. I see poison ivy." And I tried to help them see it by comparing it to what's not.
Oh yes.
And I didn't that was helpful. I just saw that. I did that without yeah,
Hey,
anyways.
no, no,
Yeah.
no. You did that because you've had 3 years of pre-learning about what a thing is and what it is not. It's on
Yeah.
words that you've read from the book, but it is also in things that we talk about. And today, it's really explicit what I did, a coin toss,
Mhm.
Yeah.
right? Now, those aren't perfect opposites, so they
Mm,
aren't theoretical,
mm,
but they are useful opposites. Useful.
Mhm.
so it's not invalid.
It's what?
Not invalid, even though they're not perfect
No,
opposites.
that's correct.
Yeah.
So it is not invalid to say that this is poison ivy and this is not. And more, the idea that you did that, you can see that you have learned something from us talking today about coin tosses and leaving houses because you just came up with an example that I didn't know about.
Yeah.
Yes, you didn't know about it. You came up with that on your own. That's how learning builds. What you
Mm,
just did is you put a personal example to the coin toss.
Mhm.
But
yeah.
more than that, to the coin toss as an act of learning or
Mm,
teaching, actually. So you're really talking about you teaching.
mm,
Mhm.
The likelihood that a mind first kid would remember it is pretty low.
mm,
The likelihood that a body first kid would remember it is a little higher.
Mhm.
The likelihood that you'll remember the session today as an experience is high. The
mm,
likelihood that you could write any of this down, well, you need to hear. If I didn't write it down, okay, I wrote this down knowing I would not remember.
mm,
And because I didn't want to have to go back and watch the whole thing over again, because when I rewatch, it's not the same as doing it.
mm.
There's something different.
Mhm.
So it is not possible to learn what it's like to get divorced until you do it. It's not possible to learn what having a baby is like till you do it.
Mhm.
There are so many things like that. And the more broad the scope of what it is, for instance, having cancer and not having cancer, that isn't technically, they're not perfect opposites, but they're useful opposites.
Mm.
Because once you have cancer, you never unhave cancer. You feel different. And I have seen this from so many people who I have seen and got cancer during the time that they were seeing me.
Mm.
Most things that don't have the oppositeness don't ever get a meaning, really. For instance, does Lexie, does it have a meaning to you that you have a degree as a therapist?
Not really, just gives me the permission to do the work.
Exactly. And so this is true for most people. Getting a degree, um, getting your license, like most of those things never land,
Mm.
never land. Think of that, because it's not a pair of opposites.
Mm.
I often have an appreciation for my degree, going to get my master's and the license because the before and after of my life, every single thing changed when I could have my own practice.
Mm.
Everything, including the idea that I could work 3 days and get all my work done in 3 days, which gave me 4 days to think, write, meditate, all the things that I've done in that other time. And it isn't black and white. I had obligations on the other days a lot of times, but the ability to write. So for me, I don't care about the degree and the license, but I do have a pre and post license where my life is so much better. You too, Jesse?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Some days I can't even believe that I have this life, which means that I have as much autonomy as I have, which is not perfect, but you
Yeah,
know. So there are most things in life, Lexi, don't land.
yeah,
Somebody might say, "Well, you don't appreciate it." And there's truth to that, even though it's being said and it's nasty. There's truth. You can't appreciate a single point. You can
mm,
only appreciate a pair of opposites, and more so if they're perfect. So the last thing that we do today, I don't know how much this will open up, is that what is the difference between psychology and emergence as a personality theory?
mm.
Thoughts? Okay, so I'm going to be blunt and say you're not going to know the answer. Now guess.
I like that. Psychology, I just have like I have examples of people typing themselves and then that's it.
People have what
I
them?
have typing. Like I have this
Okay.
attachment style. I am this in the Enneagram. I have this diagnosis, and then it stops.
That's astrology. as a personality theory is like is similar, like the way that people see it. It's not actually, but the way that people everything you just said is psychology.
Mhm.
Everything that type that's brilliant. It is psychology is theories and practices that um, type a person. So you probably didn't write it like this, but that's fine. Don't worry about it.
Mhm.
Okay. Theories and practices that type a person. So how about emergence as a personality theory?
Mm.
And you can start with, if this is going to be a pair of opposites, often you can just copy the basic useless words, right? So theory and practice is that. And I can even add the word type in because I could, that has a meaning. Type in parentheses, a,
Uh, a
because
pattern?
new, because patterns in psychology.
A fractal pattern?
What's that, Jesse?
Fractal pattern?
It's a kind of a pattern, but it's no different.
Mhm.
That, okay. Oh,
Uh, mm,
So in emergence, you cannot type a person by themselves. And every single thing in psychology types a person in isolation.
mhm.
They may say, well, they have culture, they may have this, they may have that, but they're still typing just that person. And in emergence, you cannot know a person without knowing the other person.
Mm,
You can't measure character type of a person not without seeing how they interact with another person. You cannot know your father's a one without knowing how he interacts with you and you with him.
yeah. Yep.
So that difference is a huge difference because
Wow.
there are people who say emergence, the personality theory is just a different form of psychology. No, it is not.
Mm,
And can you see how that's an oppositeness? One person by themselves, a person in a relationship with another person.
yeah. Mm. Yeah, it's making me think of the twins, Maria's twins. And
Oh my God, yes.
yeah, yeah. Mm,
Okay, so I'm going to claim, Lexie, that you learned a lot today, even if you can't remember anything, because memory comes into being when it's jogged. I'm going to claim memory doesn't exist by itself, like psychology, that memory only exists in relationship to another memory.
wow. And that's such a fucking school thing too. Memorize the multiplication table. That's how you know it. if you can't, whatever. You haven't learned it.
It's interesting. Ryan and I celebrated our 10-year anniversary a couple weeks ago,
Mhm.
and I asked when we were having dinner, can we pull up a memory from each year? And I had so much visual memory of this is what I was wearing, this is what I can picture. It was not like this is what you said to me.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, that's the thing this month again.
Yeah.
Mhm. Steve, is this why stories are so like um I don't know. If
Have so much more meaning than a
yeah,
fact. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
because it is in relationship to the other parts of the story. Yes.
Yeah, in traditional psychology, you don't talk about your own memories. I mean, or disclose them, you know what I mean?
You can have a memory in your head, nobody else is there, but it will because it was jogged by another memory you had in your head or something you saw in front of you, or like they don't exist in isolation. There's no such thing.
Yeah.
So with your permission, and I kept in mind the whole time that nothing is said here that is like personally too personal to reveal. I want to ask if I can post this to the university, just the way it is. This is probably one of the most clear explanations I have ever given, but it wouldn't be this clear without you struggling, Lexie. You're on the opposite side of me in this, and Jesse's observing, but he was absorbing too. But
Mhm.
if it wasn't for you doing this, I wouldn't have done what I did. And all of this came from the three of us in a relationship. So I'd like to put it in the university because, well, for one thing, you can watch it yourselves.
Mhm.
And believe me, when you watch it, there will be things you didn't remember. And when you do that, Lexi, recognize that that does not mean you have no memory of any of it. If you understand it, then it means that in order to understand it, it needs to be in relationship to the other parts, just like the poison ivy.
Mhm.
And if you try to remember a single memory, you will go blank. And the idea that you can't remember something in isolation, answer the question, does not mean you haven't learned at all. Somebody that once had terrible learning injury was studying for a plumber's test, and he had not wanted to get his license and worked for other people because he hated learning and was certain he couldn't pass the test. So we sat down and we talked about it. And the particular thing he was looking at was a sequence of four things that you had to do in order to pass um, a kind of license for air conditioning. Four principal things that you ought to know. You have to know this, 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 and this. So I got him to draw it in a geometric shape, this, and this. And I asked him one time, where is that one? Where is that one? Where's that one? Where's that one? And when you do where is that one, for instance, where are facts? If I'm holding up the fact thing for you two, it's over here in the bottom. Now you see how you don't have to make any effort to know that? You don't have to make any effort because it's tied to something as a memory. The placement and the word
Mm-hmm.
are tied together. The placement jogs the memory. You can't just remember something in isolation. So the maps I make help me to remember where the thing is in the square, and each place has its own kind of yard, flowers, fence, driveway.
This is, I know we gotta go, but this is making me think about when I'm overworking in a session that's kind of dead. There's nothing there to jog anything. I'm just fucking
Okay.
throwing things
You
into.
have separate pieces that have no association to something that you remember.
Yeah. Wow.
That was good, Jesse. That was
Yeah.
really good.
Because that hurts, man.
But it hurts every time that you are trying to remember a single point, a single idea, a single anything. If you can't remember it in you can't remember it in isolation. You have to associate it with something.
Yeah.
And it is the associations that emergence teaches. That's it. That a certain kind of pattern will say object visual or visual spatial, like I'm visual spatial, means that I tend to see things I picture in stories. It's
Mm,
a tendency, it's a correlation. Doesn't mean I always do that or only do that, but it means that's my first mostly, that's the way I mostly do it.
mhm.
Some people are verbal processors and mostly they begin with words. Okay, so you see, I say a name and a person, and then I say what it's like. So all of the things I talk about are really just associations to jog my memory.
Mm.
Who knew this would be this kind of conversation?
God, yeah.
Anyway,
Thank you so much.
you're
Yes.
welcome. Thank you for asking me, Lexie and Jesse, and have a good day, both of you.
You too.